this show. It's a great honor for me to take this opportunity to introduce two artists that I respect and admire their works for so many years to all of you today. I think before we jump to concept the show outside, I'd like to give you a little background stories why Chris and Tozer and I are in this room today. So it was about 7 years ago, 2010. I was working at the show Taipei Biennial. Both Chris and Pak were the artists in that exhibition. It was the first time I worked with both of them. In that biennial, it's a very interesting setup. It's an experimental with the curatorial practice. Is that we only have 24 artists in the show, but all the works are newly commissioned. So it's kind of a rare situation for the biennial and also for the curators, because it's kind of challenging for curators because you don't know what you're expecting. When there are seats in the front, if you don't mind, can come to the front. There are still some seats here. So in that biennial, we get a chance to work with artists very closely, starting from developing ideas and researching into the production. And that's how the time that I fell in love with these two artists and how, because I just got in so much inspiration to have discussion with them and how they construct the works. And also the time that I found these two artists, even though they have very different approaches to their practice, but there is something similar in how they construct the works and the creation process. So that was in 2010, I had this small things in my mind. And so the ideas of this show, years later, I moved from Taipei to Hong Kong. The idea of this show starts from a conversation with Tozer. He has been telling me this court case project he has been doing. Later we can elaborate it more. That project, actually, you can see from an artist how the transformation from an artist's state of mind, from lack of enthusiasm to creation, and then suddenly it comes back. There is a kind of force through developing a project. And that kind of gave me, it's not a wake-up call, but it's a kind of giving an answer to the question that I've been asking myself for many years, as what we're doing, what is art can do as a cultural content providers, what can we do to counter the changes of the political climate nowadays, especially the end of 2016 and how we entered 2017 with the Brexit and Trump. You can't afford, inevitably need to ask yourself these kind of questions. So when Tozer was on board to doing the show, I immediately thought about Chris. Because I think, wow, this is like, after years, I finally got a chance to work with these two artists. I don't know what things will be. I don't know what kind of, at that time, didn't have a very clear framework of the exhibition, but I'm very confident that when we put these two artists together, I think there will be interesting conversation happening. So I think I sent a very vague invitation to Chris. I think I said, I want to do a show with you in Hong Kong, together with Tozer. I don't know what it is yet, but are you interested? And then he said yes. So that's how we begin with this journey. So I think today it's a good chance that each artist, we can have a little more leverage of the project that we have outside. So Chris, I would like to start with you. So when you accept the invitation, we have several proposals. You sent us several proposals, and the first thing we kind of decided and finalized is this book. It's job interviews. Would you like to maybe take this as a starting point about your journey in Hong Kong?
So, this is up? Hello? Yes. So when Freya first invited me, I asked Freya to send some information about, just give me a little bit more insight into what was going on in Hong Kong. A year ago and a year before that, just to kind of key me in a little bit, prior to my coming here, And when I got lots of information, lots of reading stuff, and I decided, my response was that there was no way on hell's earth I could do anything with this material. Coming from, afar and coming here, what approach would I have with that? But crucial to what I do is, most of my work comes out of a conversation, out of a two-way conversation. And I thought about how I might bring some, how I might work with the structures that I normally work with, where I would find out who was involved in the making of a show or supporting an institution or so forth. Or I would try to bring groups that would not normally sit together at a table and bring them together in some sort of manner to work. So I suggested working with diplomats, or I bring the police force in to recruit at art schools and so forth. But with this, I thought I might try to...
Sorry, do you mind speaking closer
Sure.
to the mic, please?
Yeah. I'll try. Just that again? So I thought, what ideas can I bring to this, or how should I respond to this request? What would it mean to show my work here? What could I make that relates to what I've been making previously? So that, I guess, the show that I was in before here was the last Liverpool Biennial, where I invited one of the sponsors, a jewelry company, to make a ring for the biennial. So often it is quite involved in the situation, but here it felt strange to come and do that, given the weight of the context. So I thought, well, how do I respond to my own working practice in a way that might be able to abstract from it in some way to find another structure of working? And so I became interested in the protocols of job interviews, which I kind of like to think of as being like a courtship, where it's social relations made into material, where it's a reflection of expectations and these kind of things. I thought that might be an interesting context with which to approach work. Where, similar to my previous work, it's about a conversation, but usually a conversation where each side of the conversation sees themselves reflected back at themselves, amplified. So I invited a number of artists you'll see in the book. Nadim, who's obviously Hong Kong based, Heman Chong, who's in Singapore, Natasha Soobramanien, who's an amazing writer from Malaysia, and so forth. And then I produced a series of airbrush paintings to go with this.
Yeah, so this anthology was contributed by 10 writers, as just mentioned, and then so this, starting from the job interviewers, the protocols, these 10 contributors, they write fictional stories in that very different formats. There are short fictions, there are scripts, there are poetries, and then so taking from this, how in the job interview protocols, and then people to meet certain kind of expectation, and it kind of leads to the 5 big window sculptures you see outside, which is also the mimicry of this bureaucratic transactions that we all familiar with when you go to like visa application or any government offices, and you have this kind of, this is a transparent window, the glass is kind of blocking you and with the authorities. And there is a relief sculptures on top of it, yes. Yeah. And there is a very subtle link, so you can find it's the cowlick, which is also the title of the work. Would you like to elaborate?
Sure, so I wanted to put this relief sculpture that would be in between a person on one side and a person on the other side of this transactional window. And maybe also like the situation in Hong Kong, it felt quite loaded as a thing to start off with. So how do I play with that? How do I make that? Do I make it more gentle, or do I soften that? If there is a gesture, what is that gesture? What is the value of that gesture? If there is a gesture that's expressed in this form, should it be from me, or should it be automated, or should it be machining? So I decided to go for a cowlick, because I'm not in control of that. I just put a bucket of molasses in out, and the cow licks the molasses. I take a cast of that, and then I use that cast. So it was to produce some, and a cowlick is, just by nature, feels as though it's flippant, as though it's arbitrary, but it's also like, as if it's not caring. It's not caring about anything. It's just like so. Maybe even dismissive, maybe flippant, maybe none of those things. So I thought I'll take this cowlick and I'll incorporate this in this relief sculpture. And then the materials that I will use will play around with that idea of the liquidity and fluidity of this in an opposite way by using jesmonite, which is powder-based, or by wax, which is more akin to that.
Why cowlick? What is special about cow?
I think I was just reading a magazine one day, and the magazine was about celebrities getting frustrated that their hair had this strange kink, perversion in their hairstyles that's called a cowlick. And sometimes it's kind of nice to take things too literally. So I'm not interested in the hair thing, but I was interested in this kind of funny, this odd perversion or something. And so, from there.
And this cow, because when Chris was in town in May, that we went to many parts of the places in Hong Kong trying to look for cows. But we couldn't find any cows in Hong Kong. This is surprising because there are only buffaloes. But there's a kind of cow and the farmer relations actually become one of the elements in another piece. When, I don't know if you guys noticed, when you're walking to the Parasite, you hear a very strange jingle. There is a farmer singing, there is a bass jingle behind that. We recorded it with a Hong Kong farmer.
So the piece of work is called a jingle, and I think of it as being like an audio ID for an exhibition. It's from a series. So it's like an audio selfie of the show. And it also proclaims, it's like a doorbell, I guess, it proclaims the arrival of a visitor or the departure of a visitor. So it's accentuating them more than the show itself. And the reason why I work with the farmer with this and previously is that I think just by the person's profession and what they do, what comes with that is expectation on behalf of us as visitors, that we think to us, that we project onto what we hear with what we know about what a farmer does. So like I mentioned before, was that it's often about a conversation in the work where your thoughts and what you do becomes amplified rather than necessarily a collaboration. So it's not a collaboration, it's a mirror, it's a two-way mirror. It reflects back on what you might think a farmer would sound like. And the farmer was asked to make the sounds of percussion instruments because that's the opposite of something that is specific. It's something that's more generic. Percussion sounds pretty similar all over the world. Just to take this specificity and apply it to something generic. And then the bass notes that you hear is from what you often hear on American sitcoms between scenes, where there'll be like a little bass riff. So it's to take that as well.
I can see there is a lot of confusing faces and our audiences. So yes, Chris's work, it sounds abstract with what he would just describe it, but it's actually not. He's creating this situation that's inviting the audience. When you walk into this space, this jingle is welcome you to this space. You're the leading character of this show, and how you see, how you experience with all these window transactions, and then in the end into reading, you drop into it was a very strange design of the book covers, and also all the stories there. So Chris is creating this abstract scenarios, but for inviting people to participate. And that served with this part of this two exhibitions, and which I feel that can in dialogue with what Tozer's work, which is a very taking part, a very personal journey, and that's taking from this huge incidents that related to every Hong Kong citizens that we've been encountering in 2014. So, Tozer, I was so moved when you told me about that you were lack of enthusiasm and being into a very depression state of mind after failure. I'm quoting the failure because some people don't think it's an umbrella term, it's a failure. But that incident actually put you in a very strange situation. But it is by attending court proceeding that those activists were prosecuted by the Hong Kong government. You've been through a very strange personal journey, and it kind of transformed the way how you see art and also the way how you practice art even from before. Would you like to start on that?
Thank you, Freya. Actually, the story is very, very long. It starts from 2014. And afterward, I think a lot of people here, they also attended the Occupy Central. And I was quite involved in it, but not that in front of it. I just involved at the back, every day going there. It seems to support the student. And in there, you find that it seems your dream come true at the Occupy area. So I think that area for me is just like a dream, and something very ideal coming up. And afterward, after the so-called failure, and then back to the normal, and then the bus comes to the living room again, and everything go to normal. I think I thought I am also going to the normal. I think I can overcome the feeling. But day by day, I find that I can't. Just feel that every day just like meaningless. And you don't have any aim or any target what to fulfill. But I don't know it very well, but I just have this kind of reaction come out normally from me. So the most often thing I do is sleeping and hearing the radio program from the internet that always shouting on people. You find that you need something very loudly in your, to hear something very loudly. Otherwise, you can't feel balance. And it takes very, very long. It takes almost more than half minutes. And my habit is every day hearing that kind of radio and hang out in Hong Kong and do seems without any aim, but just walking. And one day I find that I can't go like that again. So I have some habit coming out. I find I need to help myself to go to the normal again. And it's something that is related to my religion life before. When I was in the church like 20 years ago, I have a habit. I need to record everything I did every day. And very detailed, like half hour, how much money I spent, even though in 10 cents I write it down. And I start like that every day, just write down in half hour where I go, who the people I meet, and how much money I spend, which district I go. And I find that at the beginning, it seems I just recording the past. I'm recording what I'm doing in that day. But I find that like 1 month later, it seems I can plan for my future. I can at least plan my tomorrow, where I can go, where I should go. And in this situation, it seems I'm a little bit recovered in my situation. And almost at the same period, I accidentally go into a court to hear a court case. And I find that when I was in the court, the atmosphere, actually the atmosphere is quite similar here now. Everyone's concentrating on you, and then you feel you need to be very disciplined. And in the court, it's almost like that. And when I go inside, the air conditioning is very cold, very bright, and you need to be very concentrated And I feel I need something like that. I need the surrounding area give me some force to make me feel I need to concentrate. So when I go to the court, I can get it. So I just go to there and sit down, and I will feel comfortable. So day by day, I go to the court, just sit down. But I do one thing more. I just let the pen go on my notebook. And it's very releasing. Then when I see the ink going in my notebook, it seems to draw some dark force from your inside part coming out. And I just let it go. And afterward, you will see some image coming out. The image, maybe you can't recognize what it is, but the feeling is very familiar. And I'm just following this kind of thing. The image comes out, I interpret it, and then one day, and then tomorrow again I go to the court, and then just recording something similar like that. And then, like, few months later, I think I can be, how to say, very concentrated in my situation. And I start to, and at that moment, I try to start to do some selection. I select some of the court case to hear about it. And in the court, I find my artwork is an element help me start to connect with the real situation of our society. But that is very complicated. I think I need to take half hour to talk about it. So I just, you can go see outside. Our it's very clear.
So what you see outside is taken from like 3 different components, and it all starting from the vitrine. You will see there are 12 parts of drawings that are taken from Tozer's notebook. And so starting from the drawings that he did on the notebook, and we kind of divide into 3 different elements. And the first element is the fragment of the drawings that he enlarges as the wallpaper, which you can see that repetitive patterns, and then he makes it the form as the wallpaper, which is, we kind of want to create this immersive environment and experience. And when you walk into this space, this very bright color, the wallpaper is kind of a decorative, but it's like a bait to, trick you into that kind of situation. But the wallpaper is called a nightmare wallpaper because it's full of fear. Those patterns is actually symbolize the fear that Tozer had in the court. He told me, I asked him why it's called nightmare wallpaper. He told me it's because he walked into the court with nightmares, and he wants to take that out when he walks out of the court. And I hope that through this self-healing like drawings, he did manage that. And then when you pass to the wallpaper, you will see like 5 big drawings on the wall, which is the exact patterns that he did on the notebook. And then there are archive sections which you see it's the documentations and objects that he collected related to each court cases. And then there was very personal descriptions that you can read next to each documentation is how Tozer reanalyzed the situations he was in, or reanalyzed all this newspaper clipping or the article that he published in about at that time. So yeah, he said that this isn't really a long journey, that it took him like almost 2-3 years to finish it. And then also with Chris's work, there are so many elements, so many layers to talk about. I will not take too much time here, so I think maybe a more private conversation we can continue later on. Thanks again, everybody, for coming today. And there's a job interview book over there, so if you like it, buy one. Thank you.
Questions?
So, I was trying to, I'm sorry. Okay, so I'm open to the question. Anybody have questions for these 2 artists? People prefer private conversation, I guess. All right, thank you. Thanks so much.